backdoors. In this chapter, we're going to be looking at the concept of delivering a payload, whether it be malicious or not, mostly these being malicious. We're looking at Trojan horse type programs, netcat, generating a Trojan horse program, ways to prevent this from happening to your systems and the countermeasures, as well as software dealing with anti-Trojan software as well as hardware. Now, when you think about distributing malware, we're trying to find ways to get this corrupting software on people's computers. I mean, they're not going to volunteer for it. And with this, I guess a popular way that people get infected is through their email attachments. That's why employee training is so very important, to teach people not to trust everything that they see and download anything and click on anything and so on. Because the email attachments could have a malicious so-called payload. There could be something malicious in the email attachment. It could be a game with a embedded Trojan. It could be a virus. And other ways you could get malware is through instant messaging as well as internet relay chat. You could actually have some systems that are infected that you're working with, maybe in a peer-to-peer setup, which then infect your system. Other ways of distributing malware could simply be placed on a USB thumb drive, or it could be on a DVD or CD. You could try to get people kind of curious and drop USB drives in a parking lot or CDs in a parking lot, and maybe write something on there like confidential and get them all excited going, I wonder what's so confidential. I've got to read it. So let me take that CD or that USB drive and I'm going to take it inside my company and plug it in so I can take a look. And of course there could be set to auto run, which we'll discuss, and that could be a problem. Also, malware can come through your browser, maybe websites you go to, some sort of bug in the software. Very, I guess, difficult place to go as far as, what you're going to encounter with infection might be the peer-to-peer websites, perhaps something like Pirate Bay, if you've ever heard of that. When you look at downloading illegal movies, which you shouldn't be doing anyway, but when this is done, people that do these things tend to get infected with malware. I could say nothing is free. So you think you've got that free movie, you think you've got that free software, but you also just got yourself an infection and maybe some other issues too. So you really have to watch out with so-called free software or sites you don't really know. You don't know if they present an issue for you. Hackers can actually take legitimate programs and put them with something like a Trojan horse program, which will give them a backdoor to your system, and then repackage it as an executable. And when you get that executable, you are running the legitimate program and the Trojan, or whatever it happens to be, that malware. And as far as what can malware do to you, well, the Trojans specifically, they're really well known for remote access. That would be one aspect. Of course, you could have other types of malware that could do this too. Maybe it sends your passwords back. Maybe it logs the keystrokes that you type into your keyboard. Perhaps it has some sort of spying capability, whether it be through your webcam or sound. Maybe it's going to use your system to do a denial of service to somebody else. Maybe it's got some sort of FTP function, or not really good at all, turn off your software that would help protect you. Maybe turn off your antivirus. Now, many malware type pieces of software have a tendency to make sure that they can run even if you think you got rid of it. They will try to make sure that they know how to auto start by planting themselves in areas that would be called upon to auto start, maybe in the registries, in a startup folder. Maybe it's something that was set up by that piece of software. In the old days, autoexec bat, system INI, win INI, but of course that's a long time ago. Now, there are tools such as hijack this. And hijack this is a tool set that can be used to show you kind of the inside line to what's going on with your system without actually having to go to the registry editor. Because if you do reg edit, you're going to be looking for quite a while and you may not really understand what you're looking at. So hijack this is a tool we're going to look at. It's not going to come back and just do all of it for you and it's all cleaned up. It's going to inform you of your situation so you can make the decisions with caution on what changes you're going to make. Let's see. Alright, so maybe I go out there and I say I want this hijack this tool set. Save the file. Let me close this other window. Then I'm going to tell it to scan my system. And it's looking at my system. It comes back. It gives me a lot of information that's found in the registry. At the same time, it doesn't do anything automatically for me. Anything that I might feel is suspicious, I just want to know about. I don't understand what this WebEx productivity tool BHO is. And I go, well, give me some info. Okay, that's a browser helper object. It tells me what it does. It lets me know it has virtually unlimited access rights, and maybe I'm okay with that because maybe it's something I like. Maybe it's my Google toolbar. But at the same time, it wants me to know that it could be used in a malicious way. So at least I'm informed of its functionality so I can make a decision whether I want to keep it or not. And if I thought this was a problem, I could go and click Fixed. I check it and then click Fix Checked, and if I do fix what I've checked, it will remove it. Okay, I'm not going to get rid of that though. Of course, the different entries in the registry, if there's anything that I visually kind of read through and I don't think I trust, I really want to know more about it. Global Startup Real Player Cloud Service. Let me see about this info. This is part of the scan. Checks for suspicious entries. When Windows starts, autoloaded entries can cause a registry script and basically different types of scripting, possibly causing your Internet Explorer search page and so on to revert back to the hijackers page and so on. So if I take action, it doesn't sound really attractive. It's going to get rid of it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So that's the idea, and I can rescan. So it's a really great tool. It has saved me many times when my system said it was clean. Antivirus looked good, malware bytes looked good, but yet I had some pop-ups I couldn't explain, and I found an entry in here that said coupons, and that was the problem. I just kind of read through it. It didn't have to be highly technical to recognize that the word coupons had nothing I wanted on my computer. And when I found it, I just clicked on it. Of course, I got info on it, and then I finally did Fix Checked and removed it. So that's a really fantastic tool. Moving on, we have Netcat. Some people might call it a Trojan, but it's basically a very powerful tool. And Netcat is just like the Swiss Army knife of networking. It has so many features, and you can see on the slide some of the features that it does have. I mean, creating connections, very flexible on the port usage. It's not a predefined port. Further down, built-in port scanning capabilities. I mean, it's just really got a lot of features. I mean, if I went out there and said, I want to know, more about it. Let's see. Okay, Netcat. I want to know more about this Netcat. Explain it to me. I could go out there and read about it. It's going to give me a list of some of its features and different implementations, different operating systems that I can use this Netcat tool on. There's actually a little guide you can print out that really just look at the SANS Institute. Very interesting little guide here. They can talk about how we can use Netcat for many different functions. And of course, this chapter is going to pick on the fact of some of its, I guess, most popular usages. It's just dealing with, you can listen in, you can even get a shell prompt or a command prompt. Look at all the things it can do. File transfer, banner grabbing, backdoors, port scanning, although it wouldn't be my first choice. You can do that. Okay. And here you can see they did netcat and then the IP they wish to get into and port 80. And with this, of course, this part gave some information about what system they were using. It's been revealed that it's Apache, Unix-based system. As far as netcat goes, any sort of Google searches would also give you this detail plus more of all the fantastic switches that you can use, based on like how much detail you need verbose, whether you want it to listen. It is case sensitive though. As you can see, little L for listen, capital L, listen. This would drop a user to reconnect even if the connection was dropped, or keep on listening. So it's really has a lot of nice features, even logging. You can set up the system to listen, whether it be on Windows or Linux. And the first two here are actually listening. And with these, you're telling it to listen on a given port. You have to pick the port number you want, so that makes it even more stealthy, because we're not talking about a well-known port that, hey, that's definitely a Trojan or something evil. You actually get to pick your port, and they're basically creating a command prompt or a shell prompt depending on what system you're going into. And then once you have I would say the system you want to get into, or maybe the victim system ready, you can connect to it based on the IP address of the victim or system, as well as the port number that you just chose as the listener part. Now, other things that can be done in the world of hackers, we're talking about executable wrappers. And this is what I was talking about, the fact that you can take a really nice, legitimate, benign program, nice little chess game, this is something people would like to have, and then you put it together with something that's more evil, such as a Trojan horse type program. You put them together, you save them as a brand new executable, and then when you deliver the tool, the user will see that you gave them the legitimate benign game or program, piece of software you have, but they may not realize that you've also hidden a back door into that executable. So they're basically combined as one system. And these are just some good history ones to look at. There was one called Whack-A-Mole. And the idea of Whack-A-Mole, it was a nice way to deliver a Trojan to someone, and they're so busy playing the game, and sometimes it's not really, Whack-A-Mole is more of a game, and there was even one called Graffiti, which was an electronic greeting card that you're just busy staring at going, wow, look what it's doing. I mean, it's just basically these are things to keep you preoccupied, and you're basically hiding the truth, which is, hey, there's a Trojan going on my computer right now. So you could wrap this Whack-A-Mole where you're so busy trying to, whack the mole there. At the same time, it's installing some sort of Trojan on your system, and you don't even realize it, and it's set to be there every time you restart your system. And of course, the graffiti, you're busy watching the little graffiti being written in this greeting card, which the greeting card is not of any harm to you, but the fact is it's being used to basically as a decoy or a way to cover up the truth of what's really being put on your system. Now, this isn't really a Trojan Restorator. It's just kind of a fun program to play with. If you ever felt like taking a piece of software and altering it. Now, with this, I mean, this is Restorator, but if pretending this is the program you were altering, you could actually alter the words, the menus at the top, the drop-down menus. You could just change the words completely and, I guess, deface the program and, completely change the interface as you see fit. So it's kind of a fun tool. We used to be told that if it's a certain, I think we're trained really that certain files are safe, certain file extensions are not safe, based on what you see with the extension. Or a long time ago, I remember being taught, this is what an executable icon looks like. This is what a document icon looks like. At the same time, that doesn't really work anymore because there is software out there that can take your basically take these icons and alter them. You change the icon so maybe the executable looks like a document. Okay? And I guess if you were trying to, deceive, that might be something a person could do. Okay. So you still have to study the extension and not just trust what does the icon kind of look like. Is it a document? Is it an executable? Now remember, when if a person were to try to trap someone by basically dropping a CD out in a parking lot and writing the words confidential or something, confidential documents or something on there, to basically get them super curious, then they would take the CD into the business, plug it into the computer, or it could be their home, and then a lot of times computers might be by default set up to just automatically run whatever software, whatever program you have on that CD. So it would be wise as a defense to turn off the auto run functions by using, you could do regedit and essentially go in there and disable that. So when a CD does get inserted into the computer by some unsuspecting user who foolishly picked up that CD and brought it in to check out what's on there, at least with this, it doesn't really present the harm immediately. Now, if they continue, even though auto run is turned off, and they go click, click, and basically try to run any sort of, there's an executable in there, or double click on the drive itself, they could still end up running what's on there. An auto run could still happen. Now, as we've gone into newer operating systems with the Vista and the Windows 7 and the Windows 8, essentially a lot of these problems have been fixed. Now, there's nothing really specifically special about this Trojan more than we're just wanting you to realize that there's a lot of Trojans out there, and there's quite a big history on these, and they have different functions, and they infect many different operating systems. You can see ones they did affect or ones they did not affect. But realizing, malware is a concern for our systems, especially our Windows computers, and there's been a lot of different Trojans out there. Not that we're really obsessed with the exact ones before us right now, but just showing that they can be malicious, they can get backdoors to your systems, spy on you, keystroke log what you type in. And of course, here's advanced Trojans, avoiding detections, stealth tools. I have several methods to modify Trojan server executables in such a way as to avoid detection. Because if you're really a person trying to create some sort of Trojan, you certainly don't want it to get detected. So the idea is to avoid that detection so that your Trojan can continue to function. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there like Trojan makers and virus makers, and in some cases trying to be stealthy so they don't get detected either. Okay, here's just an example: basic process manipulation toolkit, utility to manipulate processes on Windows, and this one happens to be open source. Now, dealing with hopefully detecting and preventing malware, we know that having a good solid antivirus that we keep our definitions up to date is a wise idea. We may have some sort of all-inclusive tool that does intrusion detection as well as personal firewalling as well as maybe an antivirus. I mean, it could be all-inclusive. It could be several different tools. We can have anti-spyware type products. It may be all in one or separate. And maybe something to detect Trojans. I do find a lot of times my antivirus picks up the Trojans. If there's a Trojan to be found, the antivirus finds it. Now, something we could do, looking at some of the port and process monitoring software. Now, here is just showing you that you could download this fport tool. Okay, and now it's under McAfee. And fport does give us information. We'll get a little better view of this. Here we go. And it actually shows your process ID information, gives you an idea of the pathing. That's basically an older screenshot. Here is fport being run on this Windows XP computer. And it shows you again the process ID number, which sometimes you can use tool sets to actually kill processes as long as you know the ID number, the PID. And then you can see the process name and what port it relates to. Is it TCP or UDP? And the pathing. And of course, if anything looks a little out of sorts, you could try to study that. I mean, this looks pretty straightforward, Windows System 32, and everything looks pretty strong and good. But then maybe we look through this and go, I don't know what this is. So we could go look at that. Again, seeing the process identification number is pretty helpful. So this is the idea of fport. Okay. Over here is another tool called TCP View. And TCP View by sysinternals can tell you the process name as well as the PID and the protocol. It's just a little different, look and little different things you can get out of it. Local addresses, which might be in the form of names of the computer. Local port, remote address, remote port. What's the status? Is it listening? Could it be connected to? And it does have other options in here you can kind of play with. And you can look at a particular process and you can end the process and you can look at the properties of the process. So anything special you want with that. We looked at hijack this. This is a much safer way to look at your registry instead of regedit. And with this, at least it explains what you're looking at. Is it a browser helper object? Is it part of Windows as a default? Do you really need it? You can also look at system file integrity verifiers such as a well-known tripwire. Of course, there's GFI LandGuard and so on. But the tripwire will let you know if your files have been modified. And of course, other websites that will help you with understanding malware. Here, looking at this Investigator Enterprise product dealing with forensic malware investigation, just a proof of concept of what is out there, and many more tools like this you could find. Also have just another example of a tool set that could be used in the enterprise to help you out with issues like rootkits. Rootkit protection with whitelisting, where you spell out what is allowed instead of what's not allowed. And of course, some of the features of this: scanning the disk, automatic client deployments, and so on. And then we think about these countermeasure type tools. We've already looked at some of these, and we've looked at, there's Port Explorer listed here too, but in this one they're just given another screenshot of the one we just looked at called FPort. And FPort could show you, similar to NetStat, what's running on your system, but yet with a little more detail. That's what's so nice about it, is the fact that it tells you the process is running and it tells you port numbers that you get right out of NetStat, but it also tells you where the file is, what the pathing is, and that could be really helpful for troubleshooting. And this one, they notice that there's a port 6666. Oh my, that happens to be a Trojan called Beast. That's not a good thing. Many times Trojans are in the higher ranges, like the 6666 or the 12345 for NetBus. And of course, the TCP view was mentioned there, and plus we looked at that. Other countermeasure tools, file protection software. And we were looking at Tripwire. Tripwire has been around for years to let you know if there's been any modifications to your system. Maybe we could do a hash of our system, any sort of system files, and see if there's been some changes. MD5 checksum, we might call it. There's also Windows File Protection. Here we have Windows File Protection, and the idea is to let us, basically protect the operating system files from being overwritten. And this is built into Windows. And the idea, the hashes of the file compared with the SHA-1 hashes of the current system files to verify basically integrity against, factory originals the way it was supposed to be in the beginning. Here I've actually typed in what it was required to start this tool, which is actually sigverif. And with sigverif, we can actually go through as a nice Windows tool to maintain our integrity of our system. Critical files have been digitally signed. So that if any of these there's changes to these files, we can find this out. And I can actually have it look at my system and see if it discovers any files that are not digitally signed. So we can basically detect any sort of changes against the originals if we're talking about system files. As they would expect most of them to be that way. Found one. A little bit unusual. Might have to do some investigation and find out what this is. But there has been one identified that could be suspect. Not that all files that are not digitally signed are suspect, but it is something to consider. Because a lot of times when you run Windows 7, Windows 8, you don't run into many of those. Now, Windows has a software restriction policies built into it. Most of the versions of the newer Windows systems do, such as Windows 7 and I believe Vista as well. And with this, it's something an administrator could use in a company where they could restrict what software runs on the system. I don't see this as being something you would normally do on your just home network, your home systems, but a company could do this, where they could restrict what software is allowed to be used on the systems. So users may be able to download a malicious file or receive it from an email, but a properly configured software restriction policy could actually stop them from using that nifty tool that they downloaded. And it does break it down into different categories, and you have control over the path of the file, if there's certificates associated with it, and so on. So software restriction policies are, as if for XP in 2003, and they actually are compatible beyond that. And of course, then there was something called App Locker that is replacing this with the newer systems. We also have hardware malware detectors. They can be installed in your network to assist with malware detection. So we can go, kind of beyond just software methods. Maybe help with distributed denial of service, trying to counter that. I think a really big part of dealing with, these problems of malware comes down to the users, because you may find that certain users tend to get more infections than other users, and it has a lot to do with their habits. So even if you do the greatest security on your network and your users are still just clicking on everything and trusting all these websites with no regard, then they can end up having a lot of problems. So we've got to inform our people of what dangers they're exposing themselves as well as our network too, and understand that you just don't click on everything that's on your screen. So instead of having users simply read and sign off on the policy, they could actually discuss this. Could really talk about it and explain it, maybe do some demos. This is your biggest battle. You can do a lot of control with other things, patch your systems, only run what you have to run, and secure your system quite well, but it just takes people, your users, to undo all your work. So in this chapter, we've looked at Trojan tools, delivering the payload, which could be the Trojan, and Netcat being a really nifty tool for a multitude of things, and everybody's here it called the Swiss Army knife of networking. We saw I could do port scanning. We saw I could set up a listener and be able to get a command prompt on a target system. We've seen that you can actually basically generate a Trojan program. You could take a legitimate program, combine it with a Trojan, and then basically distribute that new executable. Looking at prevention methods and what we can do to deal with that, and that even gets down to software, hardware, and the user. And of course, overview of some of these tool sets and some of the examples there.